Hi, I'm Andrew Pulley. I'm the one of the co-founders and CEO of a startup called Diribio. We're going to call this a launch and iterate presentation. I've built decks before, but this is actually my first time pitching it. So we'll see how this goes. First thing I actually want to do, I want to ask a question that I think I know the answer to. How many here has created some form of digital product? A song, a video, marketing material, software. Lots of people? Pretty good, yeah? Okay, how many people have created that alone? Like entirely alone without help? Okay, I see 2 hands. How many collaborate to do it? Most people collaborate? Okay, cool. All right, so we'll just kind of go through the problem here. So in the world of creation, especially in the big leagues, like record labels, music, film production companies, publishing, marketing, royalties are the industry standard. People build something, they'll get a flat fee, but a lot of times when something performs well, they get performance bonuses based off of that, a royalty that continues to get paid as the product sells. That does not happen in the gig economy. It's very few and far between. Occasionally someone will put something together, but it doesn't happen very often. But the thing is, big money is actually really left on the table when that happens. For example, I know personally very well, I've left at least $100,000 on the table for one project. I worked with a now famous artist, originally started on YouTube, and we discussed royalties and a certain percentage and decided it was going to be too difficult to handle with all the channels that was going to be distributed through. They didn't have management at the time, and had a chance to talk to them nearly a decade later and found out that, yes, this thing has actually made a ton of money. And yeah, so that was left on the table. And we were talking about it, just going through that artist. It is a pain to handle royalties. If you can imagine, I'm a creator of content. I make music, a music producer. I've worked on several hundred different projects over the course of time, anything from Broadway cast recordings to music you've heard on television, feature film work, and music that's been on radio performances live. And when you get that many projects going on, it becomes a real pain to take care of all that accounting and make sure that you're receiving your money or paying out your money, depending on what side you're on. All right, enter Diribio. Diribio is a platform designed to track all the income sources at their source, determine who is owed what. If you've got, say, a project owner and then several people that collaborated on it, you say, we've got such and such percent on it, and we make sure to track all the income, determine this person is owed this much percent, and then we actually pay out that money to them. So in short, we track, collect income, calculate royalties, and distribute payments. A little bit of market validation here. We did a survey. My group, we did about 120 different creators. Found out of those, 97% of them wanted to actually work for royalties when presented with the option. 1 in 2 creators believe that they aren't getting their paid their fair share. Excuse me. Just last year, I believe it was, Discovery Networks decided they had made an announcement that they were going to discontinue royalties and try to renegotiate contracts to discontinue royalties for all their composers. There was a pretty big outcry about that, about 15,000. There was right on the website for this, Your Music, Your Future, they had a list. 15,000 of them joined within about a month. I took count as it was happening. So a lot of people were saying, no, we really need to defend royalties, especially in the big space. As far as traction for our own company, we do have working software at this point. We have our software is in closed beta. We've got 6 influencers on there working with us on smaller projects right now to prove out the concept, prove the technology, excuse me. And with them, they've got a few different collaborators, so I guess about 15 users sitting in our closed beta right now. And things are going really well there. We have a strong set of advisors and partners. As far as the accounting is concerned, we have Palisades Hudson. They're an international group, financial advisors and accountants. They are based in Florida, actually. They're headquartered in Fort Lauderdale. They have offices everywhere from New York to Oregon and everywhere in between, and manage about $1.3 billion in assets for a small but affluent client base. We also have Kilpatrick Townsend of the Bay Area. They represent folks like Google or Lenovo or Red Hat, folks you may never have heard of. And then finally, our team. It started out with me and a friend that kind of had the idea, but we've grown to about 5 folks so far. I've got 2 software developers, 2 business developers, and myself. The software developers have built royalty payment systems for the multi-level marketing space at scale, and those systems have delivered billions of dollars. So we've got some really unique talent that knows this problem well. A little bit about the market potential. We think we can hit a 5-year annual recurring revenue of about $100 million once we get this launched out to the public. Getting into areas like YouTube, Facebook, hook up to things like Patreon, and then even getting into some accounting software and getting into like corporate marketing. The market's actually pretty big, though, if we get past that into the available market. Between publishing, like YouTube distributions, Facebook Watch distributions, and music royalties that are going out, that market's at about $52 billion annually right now. And if you go way, way beyond into things like oil, where royalties actually happen there, and into some broader areas that we're not anywhere even thinking about focusing, that's actually very massive as well, about $350 billion annually move through there. So what's our growth model? How do we actually make money ourselves? It's pretty easy. So we don't make money unless you make money. If you receive royalties, then we do a 5% transaction fee. That's pretty painless for users. As we've been going through and talking with them, we found anyone that's we ask, all right, what do you think of a 5% transaction fee? To people that are receiving money, they're like, well, this is money that I was not receiving before. I did not have anything coming to me, so paying 5% of something is better than all of nothing. We expect, because projects are collaborative, that we expect we could actually have a real element of viral growth. The average project size that we've looked at with the people we've talked through so far seems to be anywhere between 3 and 5 people. It's a kind of a small sample size. We've talked to about 60 people about this specific thing, but if one person comes in and says, hey, I've got a project, there's 3 people that are going to automatically sign up with them. Those people then can also go and work on a project, and if they're going to collaborate with people, they're going to be bringing in folks as well. And then on the higher end of it, if we end up working with corporations, we could work on a subscription model, do a recurring service to eliminate those transaction fees for people. So we have a new problem, or maybe it's market validation, I'm not sure. This is something I found out about a week ago. Reached out to an influencer as we're trying to expand into influencers that could join our platform when we open up our beta. Found out that there is a company that's called Stir. They were recently financed with a Series A from Andreessen Horowitz. They're not a small name if you've ever heard of them. And they were valued at $100 million, and they deliver a very similar product. Royalties is one of the core offerings. The other is collecting from multiple income sources, as we do, and displaying that in a single unified dashboard for creators. I do understand that their business model is a little different, but it covers most of the same market that we intend to cover. So the questions that I have, I guess this is the community part. Should we pivot to corporate marketing and kind of step away from the YouTube space and creator space that they're in? And then the second question is, should we seek venture capital funding of our own in order to become competitive? And that's kind of where we are with that. Thank you.
Love the program. I hope to do business with you. We're releasing an app, and I can see the application right away. A couple things that I had difficulty with was the company name. I mean, even you had a problem, pronouncing it and getting it out there to everybody. That could be a potential problem. People looking at it and trying to say, "What is that again?" That's just a simple suggestion.
Okay.
You haven't really gone to market yet, but you're looking venture capital. That's a great thing to go after. But I think you guys could, in the field you're in, I think it's just looking at a different niche of it and getting out there quickly. My app has got like 4 people who are competitive with us, but we're releasing it worldwide, globally. So it's a matter of how you release and what you do with it. So I think maybe sit back and take a look at things. The question is to pivot now. You put a lot of work into pivot. Means when you pivot, somebody else is going to be pivoting with you. So you're still going to have competition. The question I have, for you is, do you want to start over again, or do you want to just go after the market? I mean, it's a risk, but I think you have a great product in the marketplace. It's a huge need. I can tell you the money that's left on the table on a constant basis that I lose. We put out a bunch of videos, and we should have had royalties on them. Let's see, 40 million views for Man at Arms. So, we got nothing.
Yeah.
And so it gets disappointing, but I think there's some real key things that you and your team need to look at if you want to start over. It's the same risk. There's no difference in your risk. Somebody else is going to have a new product in that field. So the question is you've had a good success going to where you're going. Corporate marketing departments, consulting firms. Then there's other people in that field. So where do you want to compete? That's the question.
Well, and the good news is we built our software as a framework. So where we are now, all of the calculations, distribution, things of that nature, they all exist. All we need to do is plug in income sources and payment processors. And we built it with the expansion in mind. So pivoting over to marketing might not be too terribly difficult. Some additional context on why the pivot was working with and I'm continuing conversations with the Harmon brothers because they actually do use royalties to make their videos, and they have a specific model called peer allocation where the collaborators themselves assign their own royalties out of a pool. So if someone does really well or is kind of a clincher making something super successful, then they can be rewarded for that, and they receive royalties based on the performance of the campaign. But they are themselves looking for software to do this. So that was kind of an instant validation. And for us, it's just hooking up to whatever they're using to track those campaigns, and then hooking up to their payment processor and making it to where that money can go the right way for them.
So you have a lot of validation on the supply side. Basically, there's lots of people who would love to get paid this way. Mm-hmm. What have you seen on the demand side? Do people who are using these sorts of videos and these sorts of content and the things that people created, do they like paying? Do they like paying on these terms? Do they, basically, to some degree, are you creating sticker shock for them, where everyone who is on your platform suddenly becomes less marketable because they're going to be getting royalties for their work rather than someone else who's going to go to find someone else in a different gig economy that's cheaper?
That's a great question, and one that I've spent a lot of time with as well. So we've done a couple of things to take the pain out of it a little bit, and found a couple of areas that people consistently get excited. Those areas are, first of all, when you say, hey, we are independent creators, and I don't necessarily have budget to pay you a full amount. That happens frequently. I've talked to Morgan, actually, about it when we met just a couple of weeks ago. And realized that, a lot of people don't have budget, so collaborators say a videographer can come in and say, yes, I'll do this work for you at either a reduced rate or free in place of a royalty, and replace it with a royalty. So that's got the people that would be paying out very excited. And then as far as the demand is concerned, on kind of furthering that, the money that gets paid is paid to us anyway, the money that gets paid is by the collaborators, those that are receiving the money. So the only money that goes out as far as the project owner is concerned is whatever the split of royalty was.
So you aren't actually enforcing that at all. In other words, you have no way of knowing how much people are making on the media that they're using and borrowing. You're shifting that burden to the creators. Is that right? They're going to be enforcing their own royalty contracts.
Now the software actually enforces the royalty. An example, and the first place that we built for was YouTube. So we hook up to the YouTube API in AdSense, and that software actually goes through. It tracks how much money has been earned automatically, and then as soon as a payment has been sent out, we're able to detect that through AdSense and automatically start the chain reaction of collecting the money and sending it out to the collaborators.
Question. What does the onboarding for creators as well as the the clients for these creators look like?
It's pretty straightforward. I should have hooked up a computer here and we could have actually gone through the working software, but as far as onboarding into the system is concerned, there's first name, last name, password, email. Once they're in there, they can create a project. No payment if I am the project owner, someone who's going to be paying, I don't have to enter in any payment information or any bank accounts until the very last step of project creation. So we've tried to reduce that friction as much as possible, take advantage of the sunk cost fallacy, and keep the onboarding as just small as possible. There's 4 fields to get started. And then as far as the collaboration side is concerned, given know your customer laws and some of those things that we have to make sure that we're in compliance with, we've made that really simple as well. Same 4 fields to get onto the platform and start receiving money. And then we can't actually pay out until some other things have been filled out, like business description, address, and then payment information as well there. Those do take a few more fields. But they can be filled out at any point in the project. So we can even say, hey, you've got like $500 waiting for you as soon as you fill out this information. So we've tried to make it as easy and painless as possible.
Yeah, you mentioned YouTube several times.
Yes.
Have you worked with anybody else or tried to contact anybody else like TikTok or SoundCloud, these platforms that...
Yeah, so the next one we're looking at was going to be Facebook Watch. There is monetization that's there. We've also made contact with Patreon, and there's several other areas that have open APIs. One area that people make money is on merch at like live concert sales for music. So hooking up to Square is not a difficult thing to do. We can track specific inventory and pay out royalties based on that inventory sales.
So we talked a few weeks ago, and I love this idea. I think it's really good. One thing that I was thinking of one thing that I've observed here in Utah, and probably everywhere, it's the same, is that we have an excess supply of creators who, or artists who aren't making money, and they have like a lot of dreams and ambitions, but a lot of times they treat their craft like it's a shot in the dark. There's no real strategy. They're not following a plan to be able to build a brand and a business. And so I think it's really awesome and honorable to target those people to try to help them make money. But as far as your business strategy, I think it would be more wise to target the people who are currently making money. So for someone like me, for example, as a videographer, or if you were trying to get videographers on the platform, rather than finding the ones who aren't making money and selling them on an idea to that they'd start making money, you find the ones who are currently doing well, who are currently, making anywhere between 50 and 150,000 a year just on a contract basis, because those people are much more connected and they're going to be a lot more likely to implement this in addition to what they're already making. So say a videographer is charging $2,000 for a music video, then they would be like, hey, I'm going to keep charging $2,000 for a music video, but now I'm going to add that I want 10% royalties. And a videographer like that is going to know potentially, 50 creators who are currently monetized on YouTube and Facebook, and that's where the virality would come from, rather than people who they're treating it like almost like a gamble.
Yeah, that's great. Absolutely great feedback. Thank you.
A couple questions on compliance. Are with the amount of payment information that you guys have, are you within PCI scope? Have you looked at the scenario where there's some sort of dispute between the creator and the owner of the channel? And what's, I guess, and then the second question really would be, what's the signal from these probably middle market and enterprise marketing departments that makes you think that the pivot to there would be better than dealing with competition?
Okay, great, great two questions, and I'll see if I can answer them fairly succinctly here. We don't have to worry about PCI compliance specifically because we're not using credit cards for processing. We are using ACH, and we're doing that through Stripe. So most of our KYC rules are based off of what Stripe requires. Software doesn't work unless you're in compliance. And then as far as like you were talking about disputes and what have, we do have the system set up in a way to handle clawbacks and our, in the case that that's necessary, say we have a problem, and kind of retroactive paybacks through continued royalty earnings. There's a few different ways we've set up to handle that. But as far as disputes are concerned, part of our terms of service that we put out is that disputes are between individual users, and that's not an area that we're specifically responsible for. The legalese was put together by our legal team with Kilpatrick Townsend in Stockton. So I think it's pretty robust, I hope. They're pretty good at what they do. And then the other question that you had regarding why moving over to corporate as opposed to creators of this sort kind of follows the model of, if I can get someone who's paying me consistently, $2,500 or $5,000 a month in a subscription, getting 10 of those is arguably better than getting 1,000 YouTubers who are earning me the same amount. So smaller group of people to get to, but bigger impact.
So, Andrew, just a couple things. Number one, great job if this is your first time presenting.
It is, thank you.
Very good job. I'm impressed. Keep it up. I think you should hit some of the other local chapters as well. They'll benefit from hearing what you've got.
Okay.
And to your last question, should you seek VC funding? I think that there's no harm in going and seeing if that's the right fit for you. If you haven't pitched to a VC yet, identify some of the ones that would be a good partner. You're going to want more than just a check from them. You're going to want someone that's got a vested purpose in what you're doing, who's going to add more value on the sense of, besides just a check, right? Someone that's in your corner. You will give up equity for that, so I'm not quite sure what your equity structure looks like right now.
Yeah.
The more traction you have, the better terms you're going to have. So it's not going to hurt to explore those options. You're going to know right away if one VC is a good partner and one's a not.
Okay.
Do some homework. Ask for referrals of their portfolio companies and who's already signed on with them, and then have a sidebar conversation with them and really get the behind the scenes story if they have been a good partner and it was the right decision to pick that VC or not, because you'll learn from the portfolio company more than you will the guys that are wanting to invest.
For sure. Thank you. That's great. See a couple more.
One idea that I just had, I don't know like the legal side of this, but I think it would be cool for part of your onboarding process to offer contract templates for how creators can negotiate these deals, and also offering like a set of videos that show like how to approach an existing client to renegotiate terms, and just show them, you know, kind of the psychology behind it and how to position yourself to make more money.
Okay. So training would be a good idea. I like that a lot. And then the first part again, say that. Oh, contract templates. Yeah, that's a great idea as well. Thank you.
Yeah, along the same lines as the contracts. That's my biggest concern in the marketplace would be companies who shift. Just like, for example, you're about to shift, maybe, you know, that's a thought. And so all the contributors to the first group, you've now shifted, so they're out basically, even though you still have all that knowledge you've gained and to utilize. And so that's where a lot of people lose that royalty, because it's like, oh, we're just going to shift a little this way. We're not doing what we initially told you we're going to do. Have you thought about how to basically fix some of that problem? Because that is a big problem in the open marketplace right now. People, I mean, you do a song for somebody and they say, well, this is not going to, we're not going to air this. And they say, well, but we're going to air this other one. We're not going to use your music for that, which the contract is for. We're going to use it for this because we have a contract for this. And you're out the money. I mean, that's the reality of the game, especially in Hollywood, Netflix, et cetera. So have you looked at some of those? You have a good legal team. I mean, that's some pretty heavy legal contracts. That's what I'm asking is, have you got all that pretty much in place, you know, the 30-page stuff that you're going to have to sign to protect people?
The terms of service is pretty robust. It's well, it's lengthy at any rate. I've tried, one of the things I tried to do, because we're creators, right? We don't want to read legal stuff. We don't want to do accounting. That's why accounting doesn't get done. So I tried to, the way I had them write it was as plain English as possible. Like, here's what you're doing, here's why you're doing it, kind of language. And so it seems to come across pretty well, but I mean, still the way it's being agreed to with registration and creating a project, it says, you know, by clicking, I agree to these terms, you know, you're agreeing to these terms, and here's the link to them. You know, so I guess it might be a worthy thing to include into our software, something that tries getting people to read through it a little bit more and help them understand the ramifications. So good feedback. Thank you.
All right, if we don't have any more questions, then we have one last question for you, Andrew. What can the 1MC community do for you?
Yes, the 1MC community question. Based off of our discussion here, I think if I am going to be competitive with my competition that's just coming around as well, either I am going to want to pivot or get VC funding, probably get VC funding under any circumstance. I would love to hear people's thoughts and advice on how to approach that, since I've never really dove into it very much. And we can discuss that offline individually, anyone that's got some thoughts or suggestions.